That morning began like any other in the small town in Connecticut, a place where just a change of hairstyle was enough for the whole neighborhood to know before dinner. Danny stood in the familiar kitchen, the pale sunlight filtering through the foggy window pane, searching for his wallet in his wife's handbag. He only intended to get some loose change for coffee on his way to work. But what he found made all the sounds in his head suddenly go silent. A bottle of high-end lubricant lay neatly in the side drawer, next to an expensive protective case, the kind Lisa had always complained about being allergic to. Danny stood frozen for a few seconds, his hand gripping the item tightly, as if letting go would shatter their 8-year marriage onto the kitchen floor. Danny was 35, repairing laptops for a small electronics shop in town. He was the principled, meticulous type, always backing up his data twice and carefully reading the instructions before assembling anything. Lisa, however, was different. She worked as an executive assistant at Morrison & Associates, always ambitious, always walking in high heels as if the whole world were a ladder she had to climb at all costs. Most men, upon discovering this, would be furious, storming to their wives' offices, banging on tables and confronting their mistresses. But Danny wasn't that kind of man. In his chest, anger didn't erupt. It froze. That evening, while Lisa was showering, the steady sound of running water echoing in the bathroom, Danny sat alone at the kitchen counter under the cold, yellow light. He opened the bottle of gel with the meticulousness of a watchmaker. Half of the solution was poured down the drain. The rest was replaced with a mixture he'd used in his college pranks. Extremely potent green dye, and just enough pepper spray. Danny gently shook the bottle, his eyes reflecting the eerie green under the light. Perfect. Even the protective case didn't escape his special attention. A tiny sewing needle pierced each one with near surgical precision. The tiny holes were barely noticeable to the naked eye. "Want to play a dangerous game?" he muttered. "Then let's play big." Lisa emerged from the bathroom, a towel wrapped around her, her wet hair dripping down her shoulders. She smiled as if she had never betrayed anyone. "How are you today?" "Just average." Danny watched her intently. Not a hint of unease flickered across her face. Lisa was such a good actress. So good that if he hadn't seen the items in her bag, he probably would still believe he was living in a happy marriage. During dinner, Lisa casually mentioned having to work overtime. "A big case," she said, turning her spaghetti. "Mr. Patterson wants the whole team to stay up all night at the Hartford Convention Center." Richard Patterson, the firm's senior lawyer, the dapper, gray-haired type, driving a silver Porsche, long divorced, and always thinking his status was enough to make married women forget their wedding rings. "Where?" Danny asked, his voice calm. "Hampton Suites near the highway." Danny knew that hotel, the place where you could rent rooms by the hour if you knew the right person. That night, as Lisa slept soundly beside him, Danny quietly attached a tracking device under her car seat. Every movement was precise and quiet, like a technician disassembling a motherboard. 3 days later, his phone rang. The GPS signal indicated Lisa's car was parked at Hampton Suites at 3 o'clock in the afternoon, exactly the time she said she was meeting clients downtown. Danny drove there. He parked behind a garden truck, discreet enough to avoid attention but still offering a clear view of the parking lot. Inside, the smell of cooled coffee mingled with the scent of hot plastic under the early summer sun. He sat still, his eyes fixed on the hotel entrance. 20 minutes later, Lisa emerged from room 237. She adjusted her hair, smoothing the black dress Danny had bought her for their wedding anniversary. Right behind her was Richard Patterson. He adjusted his tie, a triumphant smile on his face. Then, right there in the parking lot, they kissed. Not a polite office hug, but the kind of kiss that smeared lipstick on their collars and shattered a marriage. Danny raised his phone. Every picture was captured clearly. Their faces, the time, the place, the perfect evidence. But for Danny, that wasn't enough. For the next week, He silently monitored their schedule. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Lisa would text him saying she had to work overtime, then disappear to Hampton Suites with Patterson. The third time, Danny rented the room directly below theirs. The hotel looked luxurious, but the walls were so thin he could hear every word echoing down from the ceiling. "My husband is completely clueless," Patterson sneered. "Danny is kind," Lisa replied, her voice full of mockery. "But incredibly boring." "Do you know what the most interesting thing he brought to our marriage last month was? A password management software." Their laughter felt like a knife scratching at Danny's nerves. For an hour, he sat in the darkness listening to the two of them mock him, his job, his personality, even the type of cereal he ate every morning. Each word was like a nail driven deep into the coffin of their marriage. Danny only stood up when they left. Outside the parking lot, Patterson's silver Porsche gleamed under the security lights. Danny looked at it for a few seconds, then smiled. He didn't need to touch the car. He had a far more interesting plan. 2 weeks later, Lisa returned home with a pale face, red eyes, and skin stained with a strange blue color. "Danny," she trembled as she sat down in the kitchen chair. "Something happened at the hotel." Danny slowly set down his coffee cup. "What happened?" "Richard and we had to go to the emergency room." Her voice choked. "There was something in the bottle. It burned our skin. And this blue, it won't wash off." Danny lowered his head, hiding the smile that threatened to break out. "Terrible." Lisa burst into tears. "Richard said someone was deliberately trying to harm us. He wants to call the police." "Oh?" Danny raised an eyebrow. "But what were you two doing in the hotel?" Lisa was speechless. That night, Danny's phone rang. It was Mike, his cousin who worked as a security guard at Hampton Suites. "You have to hear about this," Mike chuckled, almost choking. "The two people in room 237 were taken to the emergency room today almost naked, covered in green. A guest even filmed it. Now social media is going crazy." Danny watched Lisa soaking in an oatmeal bath to soothe the burning sensation. "That sounds humiliating." "Humiliating? The whole town is calling them the Hulk couple in love." The next morning, Lisa emerged from her bedroom with skin mottled green like a character from a cheap horror movie. She stood in front of the mirror, trembling with panic. "I can't go to work like this." Just then, the phone rang. Richard Patterson. Danny quickly answered. "Danny," Patterson growled, his voice hoarse with pain. "We need to talk." "Of course. Someone deliberately attacked us, and I believe it was you." Danny leaned back in his chair, his voice eerily calm. "What do you mean, we? Do you mean what you and my wife were doing in the hotel?" The other end went silent. Lisa turned pale. Danny continued, his voice as light as a conversation about the weather. "Oh, right. Work, right? I forgot. What kind of work requires two people in a hotel room during office hours, Mr. Patterson?" A long silence followed. Patterson could only gasp in despair. And Danny understood. The game was over. Because the most painful thing wasn't the blue dye staining their skin. It was that the whole town now knew the true face behind that perfect facade. Lisa lost her reputation. Patterson lost his career. And Danny, the man considered the most boring and easily deceived, was the only one to emerge from the wreckage with a clear head. Months later, in the noisy Murphy's Tavern filled with laughter and clinking beer glasses, Danny received his final message from Lisa. She said she understood what she had lost, understood that Patterson had never loved her. He understood that 6 months of infidelity wasn't worth 8 years of marriage. Danny read the message and deleted it. No reply. Outside the bar, the cold Connecticut night wind swept through the quiet little streets. Danny got into his car, taking a deep breath of the free air for the first time in years. Some might think he went too far, that turning his wife's lover into a green man was cruel. But for Danny, the real cruelty was being betrayed day by the person lying next to him every night. He didn't destroy their lives. They did it themselves. Danny simply added a little color to their downfall. In the days that followed, the small Connecticut town practically transformed into a giant stage for the scandal everyone wanted to talk about. At the corner coffee shop, in the supermarket, even at Jerry's barber shop, people were whispering about the blue couple. Some chuckled gleefully, others feigned sympathy, but everyone's eyes gleamed with the malicious curiosity often found in places where life was too peaceful for anything interesting to happen. Danny walked past it all with a nonchalant expression. He still repaired laptops at his old shop, still drank his black coffee every morning, still wore his simple shirts as before. But deep inside, something had completely changed. Like a string stretched taut for years finally snapping, leaving a void that was both painful and relieved. Lisa, however, was different. She barely left the house for 2 weeks. The blue marks on her skin began to fade to a sickly yellowish hue, making her look like she had just recovered from a severe fever. Every time a car passed by, Lisa would quickly pull the curtains shut, as if afraid someone would see her. One evening, Danny was sitting in front of his laptop, checking a client's hard drive, when he heard slow footsteps behind him. Lisa stood in the living room doorway. Her oversized sweater made her look noticeably thinner. Her usually well-groomed hair was now loosely tied back, a few strands falling across her pale face. "Can talk to you for a moment?" Danny didn't answer immediately. He took off his glasses, set them aside, and leaned back in his chair. "Go ahead." Lisa stood still for a few seconds, gathering her remaining courage. "I've been fired." Danny's lips curled slightly. "I guess so." "They said I was damaging the company's reputation." Her voice choked. "Everyone looked at me like I was something filthy." "Really?" Lisa bit her lip, her eyes reddening. "Do you really have no pity for me anymore?" Danny stared at her for a long time. The woman before him had once been his whole world. The one he saved up money for a wedding ring. The one who had sat with him eating pizza on the floor of their small apartment when they had nothing. But now, that memory was like an old photograph that had been soaked in water for too long. The image remained, but the emotions had faded. "Pity," he repeated slowly. "Lisa, you and Patterson sat in the hotel laughing at me for months. Do you think you felt any pity for me then?" She lowered her head. "I know I was wrong." "No," Danny interrupted. "You know you were caught red-handed." That statement froze the air in the room. Lisa burst into tears. "What do you want me to do?" Danny stood up and walked to the window. Outside it was drizzling. Tears streamed down the glass like smudged streaks of color. "Move out." Lisa looked up sharply. "What?" "I've signed the divorce papers. The lawyer will send them to you next week." His voice was chillingly even. "I don't want to live like this anymore." "Danny, please." She lunged forward, grabbing his hand. "Don't end it like this. We used to love each other." Danny gently pulled his hand away. "Yes, we used to." Just one short word, but it was enough to leave Lisa speechless. She collapsed onto the sofa, her shoulders trembling. Danny looked at her for a few seconds, then turned away. For the first time in months, he realized he wasn't angry anymore. Only emptiness remained. A week later, Lisa moved out of the house. The day she left, the sky was a dull, leaden gray. The rental car was parked in the yard, several cardboard boxes hastily loaded in the back. Lisa stood at the door for a long time before stepping down the last step. "Will you be all right?" she asked softly. Danny leaned against the doorframe, his hands in his pockets. "I think for the first time in years, I'm truly all right." Lisa smiled sadly. "I used to think you were too gentle, too predictable. Her voice choked. Now I understand. The scariest person is the one who stays silent for too long. Danny didn't reply. He watched her car disappear down the street, taking with it the decaying memories of that marriage. That night, the house was strangely quiet. There was no longer the scent of Lisa's perfume in the bedroom, no more midnight phone calls or clumsy lies about sudden meetings. Only the ticking of the clock echoed in the darkness. Danny opened the refrigerator, took out a can of beer, and stepped out onto the porch. The cool night breeze blew through the maple trees in the yard. Next door, Mrs. Chen was watering her flowers. Upon seeing him, she smiled meaningfully. "Finally peace has come, Danny?" He chuckled softly. "Yes, finally peace has come." In that town, people would talk about the Blue Affair for years to come. It became a joke in bars, a moral lesson in dinner conversations. But for Danny, the most important thing wasn't what Lisa or Patterson lost. It was that he had regained himself. No more doubt, no more lies, no more living with someone who always saw him as a backup option. Sometimes, the most perfect revenge isn't about hurting someone. It's about calmly moving on, while they remain trapped in the consequences of their own actions. 3 months after Lisa left, autumn began to paint the small streets of Connecticut with shades of orange and yellow. Maple leaves fell thickly on the damp sidewalks, swirling under the wheels as cars passed by. The town gradually had new things to talk about, but the name Green Affair still occasionally surfaced like an old, unexpired joke. Danny was different. He was getting used to the quiet. No one occupied the bathroom for hours in the mornings anymore. No more ambiguous messages flashing in the middle of the night. No more unfamiliar perfume lingering on his wife's collar. The house felt colder, but strangely, he slept much better than before. One Friday evening, Danny was replacing a customer's laptop screen when Mike dropped by the shop, looking very curious. "You'll like this news." Danny didn't look up. "If it involves Patterson, I'm not interested." "Well, I suppose you should be." Mike pulled up a chair and sat down. "Apparently, he's being sued again by his ex-wife." Danny gave a wry smile. "I thought he was completely broke." "Not yet. Apparently, the hotel video has spread all the way to Florida." Mike smirked. "Clients at the law firm just realized he's the infamous green-skinned lawyer online." Danny finally put down the screwdriver. "Really?" "Apparently, the company just fired him. Nobody wants to hire someone whose name alone on Google brings up a video of them running out of a hotel in their underwear." Danny laughed out loud for the first time in weeks. Not the sarcastic kind of laugh. It was simply a comical irony. "And Lisa?" he asked after a few seconds of silence. Mike shrugged. "Apparently she's working at a customer service call center outside Hartford, living alone. Jenny said she hardly socializes anymore." Danny nodded, saying nothing more. That evening on his drive home, he stopped at a small gas station outside town. The cold, early autumn wind seeped through his collar, making him shiver. While filling up, a woman's voice called out from behind him. "Danny?" He turned around. Lisa. She stood beside an old sedan he'd never seen before. Gone were the expensive office dresses and fancy high heels. Just a loose gray coat, her hair tied low, and a noticeably thinner face. In the cold white light of the gas station, she looked like a completely different version of the woman who had emerged from room 237 with bright red lipstick and an excited smile. "Hi," she said softly. Danny was silent for a few seconds, then nodded. "Hi." The atmosphere between them was so awkward that the sound of the gasoline leaking from the tank was audible. Lisa clutched the paper coffee cup tightly in her hand. "I didn't think I'd see you here. This town is small." She smiled faintly, but the smile quickly faded. "You look better than before." "I do look better than before." The blunt answer made Lisa lower her head. A gust of wind blew, scattering a few yellow leaves across the concrete. "Danny," she spoke again, her voice so low it almost blended with the wind. "I know I have no right to ask, but did you ever remember me?" Danny looked at her for a long time. Yes. He remembered the woman who used to eat instant noodles with him in their cramped, rented apartment. He remembered the girl who used to sit beside him in the snow, laughing until her nose turned red when their old car broke down in the middle of the road. But that person was long gone. "I remember who you used to be," he replied slowly. "Not who you've become." Lisa closed her eyes as if someone had punched her hard in the chest. "You deserved it." "That was the first time you'd told the truth." She laughed bitterly, tears welling up in the corners of her eyes. "Maybe I'll have to lose everything to understand." Danny closed the gas cap and walked toward his car. "It's too late, Lisa." "I know." Her voice trembled. "I just wanted you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret it." Danny opened the car door, pausing for a few seconds before getting in. "The scariest thing about betrayal," he said without turning around, "is that the betrayed person will eventually learn to live without you." Lisa stood frozen. The gas station lights shone down on her pale, paper-like face. Danny got into his car, started the engine, and drove away. In the rearview mirror, he saw Lisa still standing there in the cold wind, pathetically alone. But this time, he didn't stop. Because some relationships are like broken glass. No matter how hard you try to piece them back together, the cracks will still cut the hand of whoever touches them. Winter arrived faster than Danny expected. Cold winds swept through the small town, stripping away the last remaining leaves from the maple trees. Snow began to blanket the rooftops, transforming Connecticut into a stillness that sometimes made Danny feel as if the whole world had fallen asleep. His life gradually settled into a new routine. During the day, he still worked at the electronics repair shop. At night, he returned to his quiet home, turned on some soft jazz music, and sat reading by the fireplace. No more simmering arguments. No more anxious checking the clock at midnight. The initial peace felt empty, but as time went on, it became more like a healing balm. One evening near Christmas, Danny was rehanging the string lights on his porch when Mrs. Chen from next door came over, carrying a plate of warm gingerbread cookies. "Are you doing all right living alone?" she asked, her eyes filled with concern. "I think this is the first time I've truly known what it means to live." Mrs. Chen looked at him for a few seconds, then nodded slightly. "After the storm, one understands how precious peace is." Danny took the plate of pastries, the warmth spreading through his cold fingertips. That evening, as he sat in the living room, his phone vibrated. An email. Sender: Lisa. Danny stared at the screen for a while before opening it. No more pleading or desperate crying like before. Just a short letter. "Danny, today I passed by your used laptop repair shop. I saw you smiling at a customer outside the window. It's been so long since I've seen you smile like that. I used to think you were too simple, too boring. I always chased after thrills, excitement, things that made my heart race. But now I understand that the most precious thing in life isn't fleeting emotions. It's someone who makes you feel safe. I traded that for an illusion. I don't expect your forgiveness. I just want to thank you for having loved me truly. Lisa." Danny finished reading and put the phone down on the table. Outside the window, the snow was falling thicker, blanketing the front yard in white. Christmas lights from the neighboring houses cast a soft, golden glow on the snow. He sat still for a long time. Then, finally, Danny opened his phone and typed a short message. "I hope you're doing well." Nothing more, nothing less. He pressed send. It wasn't forgiveness. It was closing. A week later, Danny received the official divorce decree by mail. He signed it without a tremor in his hand. 8 years of marriage ended with a single stroke of the pen. It was chillingly brief. On New Year's Eve, Mike dragged him to Murphy's Tavern. The bar was packed, old rock music blaring amidst the boisterous laughter and the strong smell of beer. "Danny!" The owner raised his glass when he saw him enter. "Here comes the legendary Connecticut man!" The whole bar burst into laughter. Someone at the back of the counter shouted, "Hey, Danny! Are you planning to invent a new dye this year?" Danny laughed and shook his head. "No way. I'm retired." Laughter echoed throughout the bar. He used to hate the whole town knowing about his private life. But now, looking back, it all seemed like a bizarre movie that had long since ended. As the clock struck midnight, everyone counted down. 3, 2, 1! Cheers erupted. Fireworks blazed outside the window, reflecting off the clinking beer glasses. Danny stood amidst the noisy crowd, suddenly realizing something. For years, he had lived as someone trying to keep things from falling apart, to keep his marriage, to keep his stability, maintaining the image of a perfect husband, until everything fell apart. And strangely enough, it was only after everything collapsed that he felt free for the first time. Mike put his arm around him, laughing loudly. "Hey, it's the new year. Any plans?" Danny looked out at the night sky through the window. The snow was still falling. The street, bathed in yellow lights, stretched endlessly into the quiet winter night. He smiled faintly. "Yes." "What?" "Start over." A few months after the new year, spring returned to Connecticut. The snow melted from the porch, and the trees began to sprout pale green buds. Danny changed too, very slowly, very quietly. He repainted the house, replaced the old sofa, cleaned out Lisa's remaining belongings from the attic. There were sweaters that still smelled of her familiar perfume. There were travel photos he had thought he would keep for life. Danny stood looking at them for a long time before finally putting them all into a cardboard box and donating them. No more anger. No more pain. It's really over. One late April afternoon, Danny stopped by a small bookstore near the town center. While searching for books in the familiar old text section, he accidentally bumped into someone in the corner of the shelves. "Oh, sorry." A woman's voice was soft. Danny turned around. The girl in front of him wore a cream-colored sweater, clutching a stack of books to her chest. A few strands of brown hair fell onto her cheek as she bent down to pick up a book she had dropped. Danny helped her pick it up. "Thank you," she smiled. "I'm always so clumsy carrying too many books." That smile wasn't the radiant one Lisa used to have. It was gentler, more peaceful. Danny looked at the book title in her hand and chuckled. "Are you really reading a guide to repairing film cameras?" "And you're reading a book about hard drive data recovery," she raised an eyebrow. "We're both a little weird, aren't we?" For the first time in a long time, Danny laughed so naturally. Not a sarcastic laugh, not a laugh to hide hurt, simply happy. Outside the bookstore, the afternoon sun stretched across the small street, cherry blossoms fluttering in the wind. Danny suddenly realized, life always goes on. No matter how bad a chapter ends, time will silently open the next one. No one knows what the future holds. Maybe he and that girl only met once. Maybe not. But this time, Danny wasn't trying to control everything anymore. He simply moved on, without resentment, without looking back at the past, because he finally understood that the greatest revenge isn't making someone suffer, but that after all the hurt they inflicted, you're still strong enough to live happily again.